you can create entrepreneurs. And that is my current mission, is to create 1 million entrepreneurs from primarily from the underserved communities. And this has been the my research at MIT and ASB for the last 10 years. Now, question is, are entrepreneurs born or made? Now, when you look at what what is happening with the entrepreneurship programs across the world, first thing is, I believe every one of us has a dormant entrepreneur in us. We never awaken. Most of us go through our life without ever awakening it. Some of us aspire to become entrepreneurs. Some of them become nascent entrepreneurs. Some of them become experienced entrepreneurs. The current entrepreneurship program primarily take aspiring entrepreneurs, those who put their hand up saying, I think I have an idea or I want to start a company, and train them to start companies. They're enterprise creation programs, not entrepreneurship creation programs. Interestingly, the percentage of those who actually put their hand up is really small. Now, most of our effort is trying to convert these 3% into 2% or 1% of the startups, while we are leaving behind the larger majority without ever letting them recognize their own inner potential. So, over the last 10 years of research, I created a framework that could take what I call zeros, or uninitiated children who never expected or never knew what they could do in life. And first is to take them through this stage of being a maker. Maker is someone who is creative, curious, and who has slowly started to build their confidence in themselves, and they have the ability to learn on their own. Given a problem, they can go figure out what there is to learn and solve problems. Now, for this, I used to go run these kind of programs in parts of the world where you would bring students from schools and teach them physical design, mechanical, electrical, and writing, learning to code. And their job was to design products. It doesn't have to be anything interesting, anything that solves any world problems. It is something just interesting for them. Things like toys and such. And this student, he created a baby cradle, such that when you put the baby, it automatically senses and starts to rock the baby. Of course, it doesn't solve any world problems, but it is absolutely fun to connect physical design with electronics and coding and user experience and such. Now, these are 13 and 15-year-old children in Kuala Lumpur. They were making a messaging wand with a string of LEDs, it lights up separately. Or these are children, 6th grade to 11th grade children in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, who are making this robot that kicks a ball and goalpost that scores goals. And believe me, initially I used to think that there were some special kids that suddenly they could learn all these things in 2 days. No, it is actually they had the ability to learn, but the schools do not actually take them into these exploratory learning spaces. They're primarily focusing on curriculum and the board exams and such. So the next stage of development is, how do you turn them into innovators? Innovators need to develop this empathy as a power, to use it for solving problems, develop the critical thinking abilities and problem solving skills to create solutions for problems that they have identified. And the last stage is that of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur needs to identify opportunities and create solutions and capture value within the problems, so solutions that they have. Interestingly, they're all systems thinkers. A maker thinks within the product system, that is mechanical, electrical, all the techie stuff that goes into the product system. Innovator thinks within the problem system. What is the problem? Who creates it, and who suffers, and what is the pain and cost of those kind of the problem? How do you create solutions? Who are the stakeholders in the play? Entrepreneur thinks within the business system. How do you transform the problem into an opportunity? How do you identify your customer? How do you reach them? How do you extract value and create a team and such? Current entrepreneurship program starts in the rightmost block. If you could start in the left block, you could go to children in a middle school kids you can start to train them very early on in a new way of thinking and building that confidence, so that by the time they reach 20, 30, 20 years old, are on a very different path. They're on a very different trajectory altogether. So my goal is, I want my students to fail. I want them to fail so that we could help them recognize and debug the problems. It doesn't matter what kind of problem. And that is how you build your confidence in facing a problem and solving a problem. Now, so when you have zeros, uninitiated, maker who's the creative ones, innovator who's the problem solver, and entrepreneur who's the value creator, if you have enough of them around, you can start to create an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is what puts everything together and attracts and grows more of more innovators and entrepreneurs. By the time I used to run my workshops of these programs for college students, and I realized that by the time they're in their 20s, the damage is already done. The school system has completely changed the way they think, and their fears have calcified. So we created this program called STEM Lab, Mini Lab, etc. Primarily a zero to maker. First, let's just get them started. The last experiment that I did was to create a maker lab in a box. So everything that you see on the table constitute a maker lab. So you see a 3D printer, all the motors, electronics, and hand tools and power tools and multimeters and all these kind of things. And we created multiple boxes of these labs, and we ran experiments in rural government schools. 7 schools in Malaysia, in the state of Kedah on the border with Thailand, and 7 schools in India. These are farming villages, farming schools, schools in farming villages outside Mysuru in South India. So we brought 6 students, 2 teachers from each of these schools, ran the workshop, gave them the lab, asked them to take it back to their school and play with it, teach each other, and come back after 6 months and show what you have created. This is the video from Malaysia. These are 13 and 14-year-old children. Most of them did not speak English. Their job, day one, the morning job was to assemble their own 3D printers, which came as a kit from China. And most of them did not know how to use a screwdriver. And of course, we had to help them, we teach them righty, tighty, lefty, loosey, and then learn 3D CAD. They designed something simple like a name tag or headphone spool and simple stuff like that, and print before lunch on day one. And they did not know that they could not do, and they comfortably did this. And this was funded by ADB and Malaysian government and such. It was adults who believed that, children won't be able to do this. The experiment in India was harder because these children had not touched a computer before. Their schools did not have computers. So we started with, this is the mouse and this is where you type in Google. And we found that they had exactly the same abilities. By end of the first day, they had designed, they learned how to do CAD, they learned how to connect up electronics, and they learned how to do the basic coding to make some lights light up and motors move and 3D print their parts and such. Of course, none of them spoke English, so we had to have translators and such. So just to study the contrast, we ran the same experiment at Phillips Exeter Academy. So here, these are kids from pretty wealthy families. They have all the devices and exposure to a lot more things than any of these kids in these villages. But what we found is that the ability to learn was exactly the same. So these students, given all these things, the distance they traveled in their learning was pretty much the same. And what it shows is that, these kids in the villages, we do not give them the chances to learn, and that actually really hurts them in their future. So what we were trying to capture were their learning agility, their self-learning skills, the curiosity, the research abilities, and STEM and understanding STEM and such. Social engagement, how do they work with others? How do they communicate, collaborate? What are the leadership skills and such? Innovation skills, their critical thinking, problem solving skills, design, fabrication, technology, and all such, and their entrepreneurship attitudes, the self efficacy, the confidence, their agency, the resilience. How do they look at a problem as an opportunity, and such. When you look at all these things, we realize that yes, entrepreneurs and innovators can be nurtured. You can create them. It doesn't. They're not born that way. But now the question is, if I need to reach 1 million, how do you scale it? And the key to that is creating ecosystems. So, how do you create innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems? An ecosystem primarily consists of three parts. One is a center, that is a space with the tools and materials, and where they can meet and talk and such. Then a community of people that the students, mentors, supporters, and facilitators and such. And the culture of innovation. How do you build that culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in this space? That takes time. So normally, first part is the center is things that money can buy. Community takes a longer time to build up. Culture takes still longer time to do. But unless you build the culture, uh, everything else is temporary. You need to kind of build the culture to make this permanent. So the first experiments to study how to build ecosystem were done in three colleges in India. I ran a program for 5 weeks, for 50 students, with 2 hours of teaching every day after their college. So this is a picture from 2014 January, where 24 of the 50 students are there in the picture, and of which 11 of them did this first startup. 23 of the 50 students, and out of the 50, 24 of them did their first startup, and now the conversion ratio is 2 to 1. Of course, most of those startups failed, but it really doesn't matter. Question is, how do you recognize your ability to step beyond this current zones of fear? Interesting thing happened is that they created their own ecosystem. They created a center, and the teacher, this is the principal, who said that they improved in their academics, and for the first time students started going to foreign universities, and of course some startups happened. This is in Malaysia. These are kids, 13, 14-year-old kids. We started with 60 students. In a matter of 9 months, there were 150 students creating, designing, and making all these things. And in India, you remember where we had to give them computers, and within a matter of 6 months, these students were creating IoT devices and Bluetooth controlled robots and such. We did something very interesting here. We took young adults and asked them to go as mentors and sit in the school every day. And they encouraged students to learn. And we could actually take 42 students that we started with to about 1,000 students by the end of the 6 months. This is the Minister of Education in East Timor, Timor-Leste. And that's a lab we set up with UNDP, where we brought young adults, taught them how to create things, go out and find problems in the farms and fields and such. And later, they were mentoring the younger generation, the school kids, trying to reach two generations at the same time. During COVID, we ran these programs online. This is a program we ran for Indian Institute of Technology, where we sent out kits of materials to students sitting all across the country, and we ran this program to teach them how to design, how to solve problems, etc. I ran these programs in online. This is in school in South Africa. That's me sitting in exactly this chair in New Hampshire. And later started working with communities to see how do you find these poorer communities, how do you reach these kids very early on. This is in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, Richmond, California, and this is in Manchester, New Hampshire, and in Puerto Rico. So I ran maybe 100 or so workshops around the world and created several ecosystems in these schools and colleges and communities. I believe the need of the hour today, with the great dropout almost happening, school disengagement happening, is to create experiential courses where students learn to design hands on project based courses where they learn innovation and entrepreneurship through experiential sessions. For that, we created two courses, one called Zero to Maker and one called Zero to Entrepreneur. This is where we take students from, say, white belt to black belt. The Maker program would teach them creativity, STEM, design, self learning, how do you build the confidence and such. Innovator would be how do you use empathy, find problems, critical thinking, problem solving, ideation, and entrepreneurship skills, where how do you identify opportunities, how do you create business models and financial models and such to create capture the value. Interestingly, this program got approved by New Hampshire's Department of Education, such that any student in New Hampshire can take this and get credit for it. The idea is to bring students from all over the world on an online platform where, as a community, where they can talk to each other, they can work things, co-design, co-found, co-create, and build their own portfolio so that of projects that they have done, so they can use it for their college admissions and even for job hunting, maybe for summer jobs and such. So, this is what I have learned in the last 10 years. We are leaving behind 99.9% of the kids without ever letting them understand or learn their own abilities. Second is creating ecosystem uh, is the way to catalyze the transformation in these children and the youth in a community to create future innovators and problem solvers and such. And early intervention is critical. If you can change the beginning of the story of a child, you can change the entire story. So, with this, our goal is to create 1 million entrepreneurs in primarily in underserved communities, and we'd like to work with different groups in across the world on creating these kind of ecosystems in these communities and start to transform individuals and the community. Thank you.